Hello once again and welcome to New Day. As you can see from the smiles on our face, we have a slightly light-hearted topic. Well, it could be light-hearted depending on which way we decide to go. From the intro this morning, you should know by now that we're in our lifestyle segment. We're talking about best friends and their involvement in your relationship. First off, I have to let you know that this segment is brought to you by Lipton Tea, inspiration flowing from nature. But to help Nana Abba and myself discuss this issue in depth as she usually does, we have author, therapist, commentator,
therapist. And the sexy Michelle Hammond.
Michelle McKinney Hammond. Good morning.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm getting used to getting up early in the morning.
Oh, we love you too.
And I thought of you for a moment this morning. I said, I don't know if I could do it every day.
Oh.
Yeah.
So my admiration goes out to you.
We appreciate the commitment.
Oh, I love it. I
Yeah,
enjoy
we really appreciate it.
hanging out with you guys and talking about stuff.
Okie dokie. First off, one of the things that we had a problem with this morning is establishing whether we have best friends or whether close acquaintances who are with us most of the time are best friends. So let's try and get a definition first off. Best friends, who are they? What kind of involvement do they have in your life?
I think best friends are people who have been permanent fixtures. They've been around for a long time. They know your history. They love you in spite of it. They're able to comment without judgment. And they've earned the right to speak into your life because their lives, first of all, prove that they have the right to speak into your life. Mm-hmm. But you've also built a trust level that opens the stage for honest dialogue as opposed to where's she coming from with that or what's he mean by that. That you're able to be completely honest with one another.
Is there a possibility of you considering somebody as a very close friend, but then them obviously having a different frame of mind, like they?
Oh, I think that happens a lot.
In their head, you're their best buddy till death do you part, blood covenants, whatever they do.
I'm not sure about that one.
No, but I think that you gotta have a track record with
very
friends.
Very close friends.
Yeah. Creflo Dollar said once upon a time, you have three categories of friends. You have the outer court friends, the inner court friends, and the holy of holies friends. Right. And I think that that's true. I think that you have different levels of friends. Because I have a lot of friends, but then I have my inner circle friends. I always say, well, Jesus had 12, and then he narrowed it down to 3. So that's kind of my formula, And then there's the one that had his head on his breast. So I really think that that's basically how it works, is that we have a crew of acquaintances, and we have close friends, and then we have the best friend, and then we have the one that knows everything about you, and that's like a sister as opposed to a friend in your mind, So I think that it takes time to evolve into that. And I don't know. The track record is really important.
Okay.
The track record.
So how much influence should a best friend have on your relationship? Or how much say, how often should this best friend interfere in your relationship?
It depends on where they're coming from. Mm-hmm. And you have to make sure that that friend is not someone who is envious and has no agenda of their own when they counsel you about things. So it's very important to know that. And I think that a true best friend does rid themselves of the agenda. I've spoken into the lives of a lot of my friends, like, they're getting ready to marry the wrong person. And I watched for a while, and then I said, I just really don't think you should marry this person. And they'd say, why? And I give my list of why. And they'd say, okay, I'm going to pray about it and get back to you. They'll come back and say, okay, you're right. One friend didn't. She was angry about it.
We separated.
Oh, yeah, she thought I was envious. And I just had a feeling. Friends. I didn't know why. All I could say was my gut is just saying, this is not a good thing for you. So she stopped speaking to me for several months. And then the relationship indeed imploded. And then she was angry because I was right. So then it took a while for us to patch up. But yes, we are friends again. She saw that I was looking out for her. So.
And how do you know that this best friend hasn't got a personal agenda?
Well, I think that that's where you've really got to take the time, and that time test whatever it is your friend said to you. I mean, if it's the truth, it will bear out, I think for the most part, we have to know that our best friend is someone who does have our interests. I mean, my friends that are my close friends and my best friend have said some things to me that are very difficult. I think that your best friend will tell you things that you don't like sometimes, because sometimes the truth hurts. And to me, that is a true friend.
Somebody can tell you the truth no matter what.
No matter what. Like, I had a friend, I was dating someone. We were talking about dating before the show started. I was dating someone, and she knew that the person was not right. And she never said anything.
She was scared she would offend you?
Well, it was interesting. After we broke up and I told her that we had broken up, she said, well, I could have seen that coming. And I was like, what does that mean? Oh, you know, that guy, blah, blah, blah. And I said, but you never said anything. And she said, oh, no one could have told you anything. You were so in love. And I was like, yeah, but I would rather you have made me angry than for you to sit. Now I feel like you were sitting waiting for me to go over the cliff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then that person's category in my mind changed. To me, that was not a true friend.
How about this one? I have a friend who was consistently being beaten up by her husband. And she used to confide in me a lot. So I told her, leave this guy. I mean, he's going to kill you one of these days. Just
And she stopped speaking to you.
No, she didn't. She told her husband that I asked her to leave the marriage.
So the two came and ganged up against you.
Exactly.
Well, you have to be careful sometimes in relationships like that, because that can happen, that you end up being the bad person, no matter what was going on in their relationship. So you have to be really, really careful about that. I kind of tend to tiptoe around those types of situations and kind of throw out a few things for thought. I wait until I'm asked, actually. In those situations.
She was always coming to me with her bruises and her excuses to her family. So I was the only one who knew that the husband was beating her up. So I said to her, you need to leave the house. Even when she told the husband that another advised me to do this, the husband beat her up again. So why do you have to talk to her about our marriage?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
but you still told the truth, so I'm sorry. You could never apologize for that.
When you have close friends, you have so-called best friend or a couple of so-called best friends, and their opinions vary. For instance, this one says leave him, this one says don't stick around and see what happens. What point is it that you have to, or what point is it do you actually take the advice of your friends when it comes to your relationship? Because at the end of the day, you have the choice whether to take it or not, first off. And secondly, when you have conflicting opinions about your personal relationship, which direction would you veer in?
I would veer in the direction of the person who is successful in the area that you're being advised about.
Good point.
How about that? If the other person has tacky relationships and they're telling you, it's kind of hard to receive that information.
Right.
But if you see that this person has a working relationship and has a history of their relationships working well, that would be the person I would go with. The soundness of their own lives and the soundness of the counsel that they've given you before.
Okay. At what point do you rely on your best friend?
I think that you rely on your best friend always, and you should not replace your best friend when someone comes into your life, because sometimes we do that. We get caught up in the relationship and we don't have time for friends anymore. And I think that the balance that we have to have is that our friends remain a part of the equation, because when you're in a relationship and you have no support system, that's usually when you get abused, and that's when you get taken advantage of, because that person knows they've isolated you and they can now treat you any kind of way. So it's good to have a support system of best friends and family that are constantly aware of what's going on in your life and speak into it regularly. It keeps you balanced too, so that if you're missing something in the relationship that you should be taking a look at. I mean, you've got to rely on your friends to raise those questions that you don't raise when you're excited about having a relationship.
Interesting. I don't have a best friend.
No?
No.
Why?
That's what I was about to ask. I mean, because if you said about a support system, some people are very, I wouldn't say reclusive, but some people are isolated. They have few friends which they keep at arm's length, maybe because they've been hurt in the past or whatever the case is. And at that point in time, I mean, if you don't have somebody who's that close to you, do you still let outside acquaintances get involved in your relationship?
Well, I think you have to be very careful about that. And I know in Ghana we talk a lot about, being very careful and trusting people. I find that since I've been living in Ghana, that people are much more inhibited in their relationships than when I lived in the States. People in the States are much more overt about their emotions and spewing everything out.
Dirt underground.
Exactly. And here we tend to be a little more secretive and keep things in and not communicate as well as we should. But I think that that's where a lot of mayhem ends up happening. It's in those little isolated dark pockets that a lot gets left to assumption. And we usually assume the wrong thing. My mom always used to say, the word assume makes an ass out of you and me when you break the word apart. But so I think that it is important for you to have someone. You have to be friendly in order to have friends. And it takes time to build good friendships. And you don't trust someone immediately, but you build a trust level by carefully sharing things to see where and how that information is treated.
Okay. Let's rewind slightly before the relationship actually starts. You can be sitting down with a very close friend or best friend, and you meet someone, and your first impression is like, ooh. But your friend's impression is completely different. Now, at that point in time, you have the opportunity to pursue or not. How important first impressions with you and your best friend, I mean, to go forward and...
That sounds like a personal experience.
I mean, no, because I could be sitting there with one of my friends, and I'm like, oh, Charlie, and she's like, nah, Charlie, it's not your spec, or it's not, and I'm like, well, how do you know? So at the point where both of you do not know anything about this,
then you proceed with caution. I always keep things that people tell me in the back of my mind as I'm dealing with a situation, and I watch and wait. And then be honest with yourself about what gets exposed. Because sometimes, here's where friends get in trouble when they share information, even if the information is true. There's this thing called pride and stubbornness that enters. Like, say I say to you, Nana, this guy that you're seeing, he's off. He's not right. Then in her mind, there's the knee-jerk reaction that now she wants to prove Michelle wrong. So she digs in her heels, and against all instincts, even as you see, and you know deep in your soul of souls that this thing is not right, just because you don't want your friend to be right, you proceed forward. That has been detrimental for a lot of people.
That happens quite often.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and the best friends will run away with their best friend's husbands.
That's terrible. That's not a friend. You can't.
But for a long time, you talk
about
trust. This is somebody you've probably known for 10 years as your best friend. And from all records, this person has been there for you. And then you're betrayed that way.
Well, he's also been there for your partner.
But the partner is not her best friend.
And now he's going to be there permanently.
Well, here's the thing. When you're dealing with a marriage or a close relationship like that, and this person is your friend, a best friend sets the right boundaries for your relationship as well as their relationship. Yes, okay, you're married now. Your best friend has always been there. Yes, she should be friends with your husband, but not intimate friends with your husband. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, I have women friends in my life who have husbands. I'm polite to them, but I'm not calling them and having intimate conversations. If I have a conversation with them, I'm going to tell the wife, I need some brotherly advice from your husband. I'm going to talk to him about this, that. I mean, I'm going to be fully
So don't just get up
accountable.
and call your best friend's husband or boyfriend.
No, never.
She should be in the know.
Oh, she should definitely be in the know.
Why should he even have that number?
Well, for emergency.
No. I mean, like,
Imagine.
Well, now everybody has cell phones. So, I mean, okay, like my girlfriend wanted her husband to advise me on something, so she gave me his cell phone number. But anytime that I talk to her husband, I let her know I am talking to your husband about this. And usually other than that, the most interaction I have is if I can't find her and I call to say I'm looking for her.
Where's your wife?
And then he'll say, I will let her know that you called. So it's a totally open thing. Now, I had a situation where a friend of mine, and I did not know her husband was a philanderer, but
that word just kills me.
Philanderer.
A philanderer.
Yeah.
But he was very protective of me, and he was like my big brother and this and that, so he was always calling and checking on me, and I thought it was rather nice. I didn't really think anything of it. And then Valentine's Day, he sent me this lovely huge heart-shaped cookie, blah blah blah. So I just mentioned it to his wife. Oh, your husband was so sweet. He sent me, because I thought, he was a big businessman, so I thought maybe he just had his secretary have a list of people and he sent them out to everybody. So I didn't know. So I said something about, he's so sweet, he sent me blah blah blah. I never heard from him again after that. So I think she must have really raked him over the coals.
She probably got nothing.
Oh, no, she got stuff. He was always giving her fabulous stuff. I mean, they seemed to have this great relationship, which was why I didn't know he was a philanderer.
Maybe the card was bigger than hers.
Probably. You gave too much info.
I don't know. But I just say it should be openly accountable, and not that much time should be spent with someone's spouse.
Okay, let's come back to the best friend issue. Mm-hmm. I know two people who used to be very good friends. At some point, they called themselves best friends, actually. And the other one was always telling, the other friend a lot of things about her. Oh, this person got me this person got me that. But the other one was never giving.
Oh, that's a beware sign. That's a beware sign. Because if one person is sharing all their information and the other person is not, there's a reason for that.
The person was sharing the information because she was a show-off.
Yeah, but if
Maybe
you
the
have
other
a friend
person's
who...
not sharing because they're not
comfortable.
Well, no, I mean, I don't talk about everything with most of my friends. I mean,
But your best friend?
There's certain things I wouldn't tell them. I mean, if it's something I'm doing in my house about myself, something that really doesn't concern them, it will probably just pass by.
But see, men are different from women. And we've had this discussion. Because a friend of mine was saying...
I think I'm more like a man.
Sometimes we can be.
Yeah.
Because I think that men are very competitive. And they don't feel the safety factor of...
That's true.
Well, they don't feel the safety factor of sharing intimate information with other male friends because they're in this kind of semi-conscious state of competition all the time. Unless those guys have really walked together for a long time, then they'll know a lot about each other. But women are natural-born nurturers, so they have a tendency to share all the information and then culminate, their conclusions and then make a decision. Whereas as men don't rationalize the same way. So we have to be cognizant of the sexual differences between us, the inclinations of how we share information.
But a woman can have a man as her best friend.
Oh, yes, I have a male best friend. I think you should have both.
How many best friends do you have, Michelle?
2. One man, one life as a woman, because women think differently. And usually, most of the time, if I go to my girlfriend and I tell her something, and then I run the same thing past my male friend, he dissects it completely different and gives me different advice, especially if it's about men.
It is critical.
It is critical.
To talk to men about men.
Yes, you have to have a male friend to have input into your male relationship.
Well, it makes sense.
Sandra is nodding. I think she knows.
You have to ask somebody who knows something about the topic.
Yeah, just like I think that men need women friends because they totally don't know anything about women.
Okay, now here's a good one then. I have a lot of female friends.
Okay.
Oh, several.
I'm talking like really
I'm sure you do. I can tell that about
he
him.
does.
Girly friends.
I'm sure.
He does.
Close girly friends who I consider like my sisters, and you know what I mean. And we talk. And one of the major things that they tell me is that whenever there's a girl who's comes around me, they're the first person. They're like, no, don't do it. Just don't. And I always wonder why.
Because women know women. Period. Women know women. We can read you like a newspaper.
So they know what's coming my way.
They know what's coming your way.
So
you should listen.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Now the other thing though is that, but Benny, here's the one caveat.
Thank you very much.
Here's the one caveat, because I have like 3 male friends that I talk to a lot, and one is my best friend, but the other ones are close to me too. But I know that 2 of them like me. And so their information is always very critical.
So there could be something in the soup.
Exactly. They have an agenda.
They have an agenda. They don't want it to work because they're still like waiting to see if they become a plan
Yeah, that's
B
why
or
I
C.
asked you if you can have a male as a best friend, because at some point, it will generate into something else.
Yeah, like one of my friends always accused
Like
me
you
of
said,
having
that
one as
they
a
like
surrogate
you, so they
boyfriend.
could be giving you bad advice all along just because they have a personal interest.
Well, the one that's my surrogate
Waiting for
boyfriend,
that
I don't
one
tell
day
him
that you
stuff.
come back
Surrogate boyfriend, Michelle.
That's a whole other topic.
No, I like
surrogate
that
boyfriends.
one. I
and
think we should
surrogate
bring
girl-
you back to talk about
Yes,
surrogate
yes, we should.
boyfriends and girlfriends.
Yes.
What is a surrogate?
A surrogate is someone who actually could be your boyfriend, but you're not.
You're leading the person on.
No, you're not leading the person
But what are
on.
you doing?
He has all the
I don't
benefits
know how
of
to
a
explain
boyfriend
it.
No.
without being the boyfriend.
No, you can't have all the
I'm
benefits.
asking
What are all
because
the benefits?
surrogates. What's the surrogacy about?
You know, it's kind of like the relationship that's a very close relationship, and other people look at you and say, well, why don't the two of you just get together? And you go, no, we don't like each other that way. But it does fill a void because we do things for each other and we're very close and we like each other a lot, but someone hasn't made the decision, or, you know, but it could be, but it isn't. So it is the surrogate relationship.
You've got to love Michelle.
That's a whole new topic.
You've got to love Michelle. Surrogate boyfriend.
Yeah, I mean, he gives me money. He does lots of great things for me.
He gives you money.
Yes.
All right.
I need a surrogate.
You know, I mean, he lets me use his car, and if I use the car, then he's put money in the glove compartment for me. He buys me things.
I want that
He
kind of
buys me
friendship.
stuff. But that's it. We have no intimacy,
All right.
no
Well,
nothing.
on that note, I hope I'm not ever a surrogate boyfriend. We'll
You
be back.
probably
I'm
are
sure you are
somebody's
somebody's surrogate.
You're somebody's surrogate.
I
You know
suspect.
what it is?
And I know the person.
They fill an emotional void without
We'll
really
be back in a
fulfilling the
moment.
role.
Don't
I
worry.
How about
know
that?
the surrogate
We'll be
girl.
back.
You see, everyone has one actually.